Tarot. Surprise! Pick the girl in the middle. Okay, my creature is descended from dragons. So dragons aren't around anymore, and some of you don't even think they actually existed, but they did. Like a millennia ago, dragons were around, but then they evolved over time, and they became what I invented it as the Draki. So I was attracted to it because I wasn't reading much outside of the fantasy genre. There's dragons, but basically I got to reinvent a whole new thing, make my own rules, play with what we know of the lore, the mythology of dragons, and make it something else. And right away I knew that I was going to have this girl, Draki, who was the very last of her kind to breathe fire. So even among her own kind, she's awesome, more awesome. She's special, she's coveted. It just created a lot of conflict, and all my Draki do different cool things, go underwater, fly, strength, they can make themselves invisible. They all have different talents, and I got to make it all up. And I'm in charge. I like that.
Okay, so the Sweet Venom book is a twist on a mythology that we all think we know about Medusa. And I got the idea for the book from a magazine spread about snake-themed accessories. And I saw this spread in like Lucky Magazine or something, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, I don't like snakes or snakeskin, but that's really cool. And I tore it out, and I'd already been writing mythology with the Oh My Gods books, and so I was like, how could I use this very awesome like page of accessories to inspire a book? So I took this mythology that I was already using, the Greek mythology, and these snakes, and I was like, what in Greek mythology has snakes? Medusa! And I started thinking about, what we know about Medusa, which isn't really very much. If you actually go to Greek mythological literature, there is not a lot about her except for that, she turned men to stone and Perseus killed her. And so in my world, I twisted that mythology, and Medusa and her two Gorgon sisters were actually guardians, and they protected a door between the world of monsters and our world, and Medusa's descendants kind of have that legacy to live up to, and that's what my girls do in their books.
Well, I grew up in a really, really tiny town in northern Wisconsin. That's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And instead of being inside and playing with Barbies, I was out in the woods because literally my backyard was a national forest. So literally, and I'm using that word correctly, it was a national forest, my backyard. And so because I was outside all the time in the woods, making up worlds and building forts and finding hidden streams, I loved not only the woods, but also the animals that lived in them. And fantasy has always been my bread and butter of reading. It's what I love, it's what I live and breathe. But I never liked werewolves. And I couldn't figure out what my problem with werewolves was. And I realized that it was because I loved real wolves. And in werewolf mythology, the werewolf is either diseased or cursed, and the whole point of the story is usually to either make them not a werewolf anymore or to kill them. And they also go through this horrific 10-minute transformation where there's ribs cracking, the snout's elongating, and some girl in the corner is screaming, and I'm yelling at the TV going, why don't you just run away? This is ridiculous. And so I was like, I don't want that. I want my wolves to not only be excited that they have this amazing power to transform into wolves, but I borrowed from physics and string theory and made it so they could use dimensional properties to change instantly and not lose their clothes and not be helpless for 10 minutes when they're supposed to be really scary. So that was the first part. The second part is I have a day job as a history professor at Macalester College, and I study the early modern period, which is 1500 to 1800, and that's the time period where there's all sorts of upheaval around the world about religion and the Enlightenment, and I specifically look at the connection between gender, religion, and violence, which means I spend all my time thinking about witches. So my story is about recreating wolf warriors in the context of a war between two factions of witches that's been going on in our world since the Middle Ages and is still happening today. So it was bringing together my passion for the outdoors, for history, and for fantasy that inspired the book.
Well, I love vampires. I love any kind of vampire you give me. An actual vampire, nobody that sparkles. But if you give me an actual vampire, I love all of them. But there's this trend, vampires have become this thing where they're all really good looking, and they're all wealthy, and they're all charming and confident. And I'm like, you know what? They can't all be that way. And then Vlad came along, and he's awkward, and he may be really cute, but he totally doesn't see that he's cute. And he's failing math, and he doesn't know how to talk to girls, and he's just a regular guy that happens to drink blood. And then I realized, you know what? Vlad is as awkward as I always felt in school. So I'm going to write the books so that I feel better about all the crap that happened to me. And it worked.
Sorry, I'm dying right now. So my creatures actually didn't begin with the monster. They began with the fairy tale. I knew I wanted to retell Little Red Riding Hood, and it kind of has a wolf in it, and so I wanted to make him a werewolf, but I wanted him to be, I mean, the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood is a monster. Like, he's not going to take you to prom. He's not going to cuddle you and tell you how you're like, he's going to eat your face if he can. And I got really tired of looking at Taylor Lautner's abs, and I was like, I'd really like to see, like, ah! So that is what I wrote, and I mean, I made them, like, I made them as gross as possible. I was like, their snout pops out, and their scales, and
What was that noise you
there's
made?
a lot
again?
of this in my talk. I'm starting to notice I do that a lot. I don't know what that symbolizes.
You're all authors who do a great job of reaching out to your readers. You know, it's clear from knowing you, reading your books, and seeing how you interact that you're writing these stories for the kid in you, but you're also writing these stories for everybody here. Could you talk a little bit about how you reach out to your readers? I know I'm a huge fan of your vlogs, and Heather's got a whole section on her website, and there's all kinds of things that authors do so that you can connect with them from here on out.